Waves of people came to this country, were welcomed by the folks who have lived here for millennia, the First Nation. And built this society with waves of people fleeing religious persecution, fleeing tyranny, fleeing to try and build a better life for themselves here than they had back home. Whether it's folks fleeing from world wars or fleeing from civil wars, these people always want the same thing: to be able to live in peace, to raise their families, to create a better future for themselves and their communities. And that is what generations created this extraordinary diverse society we have. Now, Canada remains one of the only countries in the world where citizens are, by and large, positively inclined. And one of the reasons we are that way is because Canadians have confidence in our government.
All right. Happy 420, everyone. And, well, I'm in Canada, and, well, marijuana was legalized by that Justin Trudeau there several years ago. So, well, I'm quite, to put it bluntly, pardon the pun, you're getting burnt out, Bernie. I'm tired. Haven't slept yet, but I have done many dabs all night while doing video editing and just trying to stay awake to catch the APEC. And yeah, happy 420 to you all, and we'll see how the day goes, but looking forward to APEC. That's going to be fun. But before then, me, myself, and I, Bert and Ernie, and the whole crew here, we're going to be doing some alchemy. And what I'm going to be doing is going through some of the jars. I'm going to be disconnecting some of the coils and then putting them into one jar. I have pure saline, yes, this one is pure saline salt water, and then this one is fresh water, and that's the jar on the right here that is fresh water. The jar on the left is the monoatomics that the coils are coming out of, as well as the jar on the right on this one is the one the coils are coming out on. The jar on the left is the saline solution. But while we're doing that, much more important, we are going to be rewatching the best stream I ever did, and it was in a sleep deprived state, kind of like I am right now, which it's kind of sucks because you rewatch it and you're like, man, I was so droned out and tired. And like right now, even though I've had 2 coffees, but they are THC coffees, so it's like gives you a little bit of the caffeine and then you get burnt out, Bernie. Anyways, point being, this right here, Dutch Sense and Eric Hecker. And shout out to both of these men, both of them very brave stand-up people for what they've discovered and their journeys in trying to understand and make sense of what they've gone through, what they've experienced, and what they have actually discovered. And we're replaying this here to go through and pick out some of the main points again. And yeah, so we will have the Bert and Ernie cam along with the Dutch and Eric Hecker cam. And we will let it play. That's possible. And
Why
that
is
would
there a
explain why
military-
the compasses always start spinning in certain areas around these places.
There you go. It's
possibly.
in operation then, because I'll tell you this: all the research I've done in the coils I build, they make my compasses spin, or I can direct at what
And you hear the
pole
sound of the
goes
video.
where. If I want the south pole on the bottom, I can do that, or I can make it continuously spin. So that's when it's operating in like a vortex. And that's exactly what a pyramid does. It's torsion mechanics. It builds a torsion field above at the top of the pyramid itself. So if it is still operating, and you're absolutely right, a drone in the wrong spot caught that wave, be gone.
So the drone actually crashing, Rex believes, and there's more cases of this, that it's actually the Park Rangers National Guard and was probably a active denial drone unit on the Apache helicopter that he filmed a few minutes later that crashed it, and that they straight hijacked it.
Right,
And then
please
intentionally
in the
destroyed
comments
it.
let me know if you
they
hear the
accelerated
video.
it into the cliff sort of thing as soon as they got it. This is one of the geoglyphs, or I think this is a geoglyph. Earthenwork,
top official.
whatever you want to call it, of
Yes, you can.
Nazca,
Awesome.
Peru, the same area, Dutch, that you were showing the Nazca, it was Nazca, Peru skulls, right?
Yeah. All right, so sorry, I'm just going to pause it here for a second so I'm not talking over the video. This is in Nazca, Peru, and that is a fractal antenna, I believe, if I've ever seen one, on the hillside of the desert sand going into the foothills of the mountain sand dunes along the coast. And it is where Paracas, there we go, Paracas, Peru. And it's also where the Paracas skulls are. And yeah, fascinating stuff. All right, back to playing. Hey, KY Smooth, shout out Kyle. My man, I've been thinking about you actually, and happy 420. I agree. Right, my fellow Canadian, KY Smooth in the house, and Kyle, we got to get together and do some more collabs because I got a bunch going on, and yeah, I'll give you a call. Oh, that's the wrong button. Sorry, I thought I had played this.
You crazy mother. Yeah.
It's just Bernie. Hey, Bernie, just like last week, huh?
Weekend at Bernie's.
All right, there we go. Much better. And shout out Esra, Mindful Exposures, for making that epic video right there. And that is actually also what we have playing in the background. Let me just remove these fools and myself so you can see in the back. All right, well, there it is, and back to the video.
Yeah.
So this
Wow.
is from the hill mountain there, which is now desert, down to the ocean. So this is a couple hundred feet, I believe. And it's been there, they say it's thousands of years, just as old as the rest of the Nazca lines. So this is clearly a fractal ray antenna of sorts.
I was just about to say. Yeah, sorry,
right?
Go ahead.
Straight fractal ray antenna. and it has very similar geometries to the under ocean structures that you were showing at
Also looks
Yeah,
like
that's
Poseidon's trident.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
You
going to
can-
apologize to everyone, by the way. I'm going to sound really nasally because I've just come out of surgery like 2 hours
Out
ago.
of surgery.
Yeah. Just like I should still be at hospital actually, but
Oh, that's why Luke's not showing his face. Fair enough.
it's all done up.
Well,
Yeah, but,
it wasn't anything to do with the other stream the other night, was it?
no, I didn't overdo it. No, I had a nose surgery planned for today, and had
It
it
was
done.
a cosmetic plan.
Ironically.
It's not cosmetic. It's quite functional.
Come
Oh,
on, you're trying to look like Dave.
Maps of the pyramids there. So topographical map means the lowest part is this river.
Yes, the intentionally made Lucifer here at the swastika-shaped airport. The horse in the mountains itself.
Like
Now there's a guy riding on the horse.
Effed up, like
WWW.
because there's the huge underground part of that place, and that they intentionally made it a demonic Lucifer,
that's the one
like
that had
the 3 horsemen coming in with the
Yeah.
apocalypse.
Oh yeah, the 3 horsemen.
And
Right.
Yeah, because it had the big mural in there. Yeah.
Okay, now the apocalypse ties in with this because the guy riding on the back of the green or blue horse, depending on which one you want to go with, it looks it's pareidolia now. We're straight up pareidolia on purpose. That this is the bucking horse. The bucking horse is looking at the bucking horse, and on his back is riding a guy in a cloak that looks like he's got a beard up here. And this is Yellowstone up here. The head of the horseman of the apocalypse that's riding on. It looks like he's got a cloak, and he's over. This is his head. This is his nose and his eyes.
You heard it here, folks. Yellowstone is going to erupt.
Well, no. I didn't say that. But that this is
Definitely
pareidolia.
not.
This is
Hearing it
pareidolia.
here first.
And to prove that they're using pareidolia now, I'm going to show you one more example of it. There's a movie called Zardoz with Sean Connery. It's a very, very strange movie where Sean Connery is wearing this.
What? Oh my
And
gosh.
Sean Connery, the movie starts out and it says the gun is good and the male appendage is bad, but they don't say the male appendage. They say the P word. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get your stream banned. But Sean Connery plays a mutant in the future. And in the future, there's this giant head that lands and they pour grain into the mouth of the head. And then the head takes off and flies through an invisible barrier to an Illuminati base made of pure mirror pyramids. And there's people that are living forever in this Illuminati base, but they require food. And they ship them humans and food as slaves and as food. This is in the movie. Now, the head of Zardoz. Why is it called Zardoz? In the movie, Sean Connery plays a enforcer for these people, and he's he finds a book out in a burned library, and the cover's been burned off, and most of the book has been burned away, but he still picks it up and he teaches himself to read using this book. It's The Wizard of Oz, but it says Zardoz because part of the cover's burned off, and he teaches himself to read via The Wizard of Oz. Now, why does that matter? The head of Zardoz is in the shape of the North American plate itself. Now, to see it, first, let me show you the head. And they always show it at the same angle in the movie. It's this way. Now, I'm going to prove this to you because the movie's about the Wizard of Oz. Why does that matter? The head of Zardoz is in the North American plate where the 2 eyes of Zardoz are here and the mouth is right here. Now, to see it, you have to look a world away. And I'm going to prove it to you that they meant this. Because when I zoom in on the mouth of Zardoz, where they toss the grain into the mouth of Zardoz, first of all, let me ask you, do you see the outline of the head of Zardoz here with the 2 eyes and the mouth compared to
Oh, yeah. Wow.
the picture of Zardoz? It's like he's got the beard. He's got the... But now let me prove this to you, that this is real. When we zoom in on the mouth of Zardoz, where you toss in the grain in the movie, in Kansas is known for its grain. But when I zoom in on the spot where the mouth is, there's this place. And it's called...
We're not in Kansas anymore.
Well, it's ironic you say that because this is called Liberal, Kansas, where the Dorothy Museum is, where the house for Dorothy is. There it is. Dorothy's house. Dorothy's house is there where it goes over the rainbow.
You
So
can't
now
even
in the
plan
movie,
that sort
Sean
of
Connery
thing.
goes over the rainbow, and they built this
The
weird air
rainbow.
base here too.
And then we've
Sean
got the
Connery
rainbow
goes over the
bridge.
rainbow to go to Zardoz, and here is Zardoz in the middle of the mouth of Zardoz, but Zardoz is set into the North American plate in a pareidolia-like shape. It can't be changed.
Ah,
Having liberal Kansas and Dorothy's house, I didn't know that was going to be there. I saw this first. I saw this. I was just goofing around. I was super high, sitting there looking at the freaking screen, probably like
Once
somebody in
you
the
see it, you
1970s
can't
was doing.
unsee it.
I was high. I was looking at the screen, and I said, "Hey, that looks like the head of Zardoz. That's weird. I wonder what's at the mouth." And I zoomed in on the mouth, and I sees the Liberal, Kansas, and I knew that the Dorothy Museum was in Liberal, Kansas, because I've driven through Kansas before. So I'm like, "Holy sh! You got to be kidding me!"
You know, so I just said,
And then
connecting
here-
dots in the comments section. I just have to point out that Dorothy is Dot. You know, Dot is short for Dorothy. So quite literally
This-
connecting dots right now.
That
Guys,
was
it
the
gets
dog,
it
no?
gets weirder. It gets more weird. This gets more weird. The story doesn't end yet. So Dorothy, the pavement of gold, the yellow brick road, right? Guess what is here next to the Dorothy Museum? They're built part of the same structure. The Coronado Museum, a tribute to Coronado. Coronado was the Spaniard searching for the lost city of gold and the Fountain of Youth. Now, get this. At the Coronado Museum, they have a statue of Coronado.
Absolutely.
And he's dressed as a Spaniard wearing the full costume that Sean Connery wears in Highlander. Now, Sean Connery, after Sean Connery was in Zardoz, a few years later, Sean Connery played Coronado's chief metallurgist. He hops over. Highlander and his wife are making out at a wall, like in the Middle Ages or something. And here comes Sean Connery over the wall on a horse, and he's like, "Hello, I am Sean Connery. I am the chief Spaniard." Now they're in Scotland. Why isn't Sean Connery playing a Scottish Highlander?
To be fair, Sean Connery always plays a Scottish person, even when he's on a Russian submarine.
Right,
the
right.
Russian
So you
captain
gotta-
of the Red October.
He's the chief metallurgist for Coronado.
in the
And
movie.
he announces this in the movie. So now they have the Coronado Museum right next to the Dorothy Museum. And then you've got Sean Connery playing Zardoz, who goes over the rainbow to go to the Illuminati base, where there's a secret underground Illuminati base where they're living forever. And here at this base, they just so happen to have every fighter jet known to man in a museum stored ready to fly.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
Would it
in the
suck
middle of
if
the
you were
mouth
the
of
guy that
Zardoz?
gets stuck with one of the shit planes? and
How
you made it to
many-
the F-35?
This is
How
true
many,
pareidolia, though. This
like,
is like
earthquakes have you noticed from that spot? Is that how like you first became aware of it, or was it you said you drove through there?
I knew about the Dorothy house because I had driven through there going out to Colorado. My wife and I make a southern turn and went down to Pueblo and then went up through the south, and we stopped at the museum. But I didn't know about the head of Zardoz until I watched Zardoz. And then I didn't put any of it together until I'm sitting there one day looking at, well, believe it or not, I was looking at radar on my local weather map here, which shows it much better, even believe it or not, than Google Earth, because it's a little bit more low resolution. And I'll just say it, I was a little high when I was looking at the map, but it was true pareidolia that I saw it on here better, that I saw the head of Zardoz here with the two eyes and the mouth. And I zoomed in and I said, oh, wow, there's the mouth of Zardoz right there where Sean Connery jumped in. And then I zoomed in and I saw that the direct center of the mouth was Liberal, Kansas. And then I said, oh, shit, that's where Dorothy's house is. And then that means somebody in the 1970s was sitting there tripping on acid or something. And they were looking at the view and they saw this head here and they wrote a movie about it. Or there's some real base there. There's like a real underground base there.
That's why I'm asking about the earthquakes. Like, I guess if they were expanding it or construction, you'd see a whole bunch of little ones. Like, only if they were building now.
Oh, there are.
Once it's built, right?
Brother,
like,
there are. That's
why I
all.
bring that up.
That's where the thousands of Oklahoma fracking earthquakes go right up to there and stop right there. Every day for the last 12 years I've been keeping watch. We start at the Panhandle, right?
Stop
next to
right
Liberal.
there. They stop right there.
Or they start right there, actually, is a way to put it. Is that starting right there? We go, so that maybe that would be the entrance to the base there. And it would go down below all of Oklahoma.
That there's not the consistent land, and the waves are like, it's a different medium there. So it most likely is an air gap instead of a solid or liquid for those waves to continue through, especially them being seismic waves. Isn't that pretty much like direct evidence that there is a giant cavern in that spot, that the waves stop or start there, the earthquakes?
It could be. It would make a lot of sense if there was open areas for it to travel through or around. And the big one that I found, that I showed you at the start of the update, it points right into his mouth. So like this thing really points down into the mouth of Zardoz, the one that I showed you that goes all the way through the mouth of Zardoz down to our weird underwater base that's down here that looks like the lines in Nazca, Peru. But this is 5,000 feet under the ocean. So this right here is 5,000 feet down in the ocean, but it connects back into this one that goes back up through the mouth of Zardoz right to our arrow. And Dorothy's house is right in the middle of it, which is really odd. Somebody's got to know.
Well, I mean, that could be an antenna going literally underneath, the USA, right?
It could be.
Yeah. Or tunnel.
So these guys, which I'm going to explore on boots on the ground in May here as the snow melts in Canada, but the famous indigenous Western Plains warrior, as well as in the same Badlands Valleys hill area, there's this guy, the Aztec Mayan feather serpent helmets warrior, and that I also believe to the top of the warrior's head here on the top eastern right is another Olmec's face, as well as what looks like a Viking head on the very top of the warrior's forehead and crown of his head here. But that the Ferrum Foundation has gotten extra evidence of the purpose of all of these massive earthenworks, and the evidence that it's not just pareidolia. You see these numbers here, these different sites around the valley in Medicine Hat, Alberta, and that they are in fact what he's deciphered as geoglyphs, or these radial earthenwork geoglyphs. You can see these lines, these straight lines going the same direction as these arrows that he's marked out. And that in fact that these are earthen works of megalithic stone or earthen soil that is raised above the ground, and that mark specific lengths and angles that then plot out as these different radials from these sites, that when you take the exact angle and its length and put it on, that it gives you times his mathematical equation that I need to find the time to actually read the chapter to get what it is so I can confirm all of this. But point being, it plots out to specific geographic locations across the world and all the other ancient sites. And that that pretty much also confirms that all of these massive, seen from above, terraforming structures were for mapping and keeping track of territories.
Now, can I throw out some food for thought on that? I hear whispers. Now, take this with a grain of salt, of course, maybe even a whole bag of salt. But I hear whispers that there's tunnels that are underneath those geoglyphs, and the connections that you made on the topographical maps are actually tunnel connections between point A and point B. So as you go deeper down, the connection itself is actually closer between point A and point B if we're on a sphere. It's interesting thought. Love to find out.
Indeed. So apparently with plotting these out, you need both flat maps and the globe. It's pretty interesting that you need both for the system to work. And when it comes to flat versus spherical round, that mathematically neither can be proven wrong. They're both accurate to the point that whether it's heliocentric or sorry, what's the other term for it? The second one, heliocentric. Anywho,
Geocentric.
the two different. They both work, and you can never disprove one or the other. Thus, both must exist simultaneously. And for this geoglyphology to work, both also need to be plotted out using a flat and spherical curved mapatures with it. And here you can see the lines. Those are some of those radials, those geoglyphic earthenworks that he uses. So that's going to be one of the main things that we're going to confirm when we go explore this spot in May this summer. And it's going to be a YouTube meetup. So anyone Western Canada, Western US wants to come, or any rich sponsors want to come to Southern Alberta Badlands for the heck of it. Yeah, we're going to do a week here. This, what looks like an ear pod or earbud going up to his ear area, is actually a gravel road and an oil derrick. So that's how large from above this picture is. And that you can see here that it's not, another way you know it's not pareidolia is that this is it from the fall, this is it in like the spring, but this is regular, or maybe, anyways, throughout the different seasons, so that the shadowing and the angles to capture these images, it's beyond a shadow of a doubt, pardon the pun, that to give the actual depth and features of this face and these faces that you're seeing, and that it's impossible. And they claimed the same for the face on Mars, that, oh, pareidolia, and it didn't look like it, when in fact, if you actually do a deep dive into all of the official pictures released, whatever the heck it is up there, that when you give them scrutiny, Richard Hoagland's work, shout out to him, showing that there was from different angles at different times of year, and once again, it would still create the features that show that these are indeed faces and depicting different things, just like Dutch, you found all of the geoglyphs down there in Florida of the iguana, as well as the different buffalo and shapes. Was that in Idaho, or where was that one you found? And you muted, Dutch.
Oh, okay. No, I found the geoglyphs of several of them. The ones up in Idaho, they had turned the area into, it was a war fought over the location. Hog farmers had started bringing their hogs in the early 1800s onto this sacred land for the Native Americans up in Idaho. Anyway, found that an earthquake struck below it. And I zoomed in on it. I said, you got to be kidding me. What is this? People told me first it must be farmers paying tribute to the Native Americans by carving the shapes in. And now, of course, it's a slam dunk. It's a Native American site that was turned into a marshland and flooded every year by the government ever since they took it over and hid it. And, you know, this gets into something where we got to talk about it. I got to show it. I know we're going on, like 3 hours now, but there's something that I think, there's something everybody needs to see, which is, I'll bring it back over here. You're talking about geoglyphs and shapes and plates. And we get into the shape here again, here in the Midwest, which is the giant Starford shape. And in Missouri, zooming in down here on the, I hate to keep, beating a dead horse on this, but the Geospatial Agency built in the middle of the Starford here in St. Louis. Now, this Starford in St. Louis is marked here on the map. This is where the Geospatial Agency is being built right now. This is a map from 1796. Now, the water flows out and it goes down to the river. This is fresh water, obviously, flowing out and going over this is cliffs. I live here in St. Louis. These are cliffs that go up. There's some bluffs, if you will. And they got the waterfall drawn.
Sorry, I got to also point out that battery right there on the left, on the other side of the above cliff, on the other side there. There you go. The battery star forts, that's that same battery shape. You're going to find them everywhere, and that's it's the identical battery that the entire wall of star forts that we showed earlier is made out of. And that, how is it over here in St. Louis in the 1600s, and then also a full wall of hundreds of them running thousands of kilometers across all of Eurasia.
I wonder if they're attached through an aquifer of some way, shape, or form.
Well, look what it is. It is. Look what's at the tip of this now. Up here at the tip of this now is the St. Louis water tower. And so let me bring it in and show you. It's a giant old Tartarian Corinthian column made of brick. It's huge. Look at it.
Right?
Okay,
Like,
this is
it's
the water.
such
This is
an
the water.
anomaly.
Yeah,
And
water
that's-
tower at the tip of this. Oh, whoa, my Google
Point
Earth
for
just
point, where that water
crashed.
starts here, you're showing is literally where the area of where that water tower currently is. And I think
Yeah.
you said there was 3 or 4 of the water towers in that area originally. And that
Yeah,
this is the
there's
one
two
remaining?
there's 2 huge ones and then a third one that they've built, and all 3 are at the pinnacle tip of it. My Google Earth just crashed while I was trying to show you. I'll zoom back in on it again. Here we are in St. Louis. They have the Geospatial Agency being built in the center of this one. This was not disclosed to the public. They've hidden this. I had to find this myself and make everyone, including anthropologists here in the St. Louis region, aware of this. They built the X marks the spot housing project in the middle of it, and at the very tip of it is the water
Wow.
tower side by
Wow,
side.
that X right in the middle. And then
That
and
water
side by
tower, the
side.
white one, looks really similar to the one that you find in Chicago, near the World's Fair.
yeah, the one there.
Yeah. And then look at this one.
Yeah, identical, pretty much. And sorry, I gotta
Oh,
point
no,
out,
this
like
one's got-
Dutch was showing.
This one has spots to shoot out of.
How is
So-
like a water tower supposed to have spots to shoot out of? That makes zero
Exactly.
sense
Oh,
whatsoever.
This gets into, again, my Google Earth just crashed again as I was trying to show it to you. That's twice now. Okay, so I'm going to get to this. I have to show it to you. They built something down along the river where this fresh water flows to, and it ties in with what they're doing with the rest of these forts around the world. They built a sewage plant
Oh,
to
yeah.
take all the sewage and trash. So
Yeah.
here is the Star Fort, and right over here, here's the fresh water coming out, and here's our sewage treatment plant right
Yeah.
here.
Do you mind zooming
They're
in on
destroying
that
the farm
on
water.
that X building? Like the
Oh,
X
yeah,
marks the spot. Is that an old world possible, like Tartarian-esque, or was
No,
that a new rebuild of it? And the
They built
fact
this in the 60s. They came in and
Okay.
built a housing project here, and
So
now they
they
refurbished the outside of it
remarked
to
it.
make it look nice.
remarked it, and then now they're repurposing, still using whatever energy thing that is with that geospatial thing there, right there in the center too. And that you showed also that there's all the military forts in all of these spots, and that Facebook data center, and now also this freaking geospatial unit.
And they built a school at the very pinnacle tip of it that's been abandoned, and it's for sale. You guys want to buy it?
Yeah, man.
We should all pitch our
fine.
money in, buy this place, and turn it into the School of Geophysics Studies of Tartarian Star Forts right next to the Geospatial Agency. It would be a slap in their face.
Yeah,
And
let's do that.
free energy, electrical engineering
Right there.
community.
That's
Water
where the school is right there.
purifying. Yeah, let's do
Absolutely.
it.
All these are dumps. These are all dumps that they built along here. So trash, recycling, turds, everything. Then, get this. An earthquake struck out on the West Coast last month out here in San Francisco. And it was a rare 5.0 in San Fran directly. And they downgraded it, whatever, but it shook up everybody. And I zoomed in on the earthquake epicenter. Let me show you. Actually, a picture speaks 1,000 words because I just showed you the trash dumps there, and this matters. So an earthquake strikes here, and I zoom in, and I zoom in some more. I'm going to turn off the place mark now, just so you can see. This place is where the earthquake struck. And it doesn't look like much at first, but then I zoomed in some more, and I said, whoa, wait, there's a satellite array in the middle of there. That must be why the earthquake hit there. Satellites at the center of this little valley. And then I thought, what is this? And I turned on the place marks, and it's a trash dump. It's a recycling center. Now, hold on. Look at what
And
this
look at
is.
that cliff. That's like
Hold on.
a natural speaker.
Hold on.
You got
This,
it, Campbell.
this is a star fort. Now, let me get a star fort picture open. There's our classic star fort shape. and it's here. And they built houses on one side and a satellite array and a trash dump in the middle. But now that you know to look for it, there it is.
Yeah.
It's there. It really is there. I measured it. It's perfect. It's the star fort on all sides, 250 feet going down, and it's 250 feet high. They built a satellite array.
On the beautiful metaphor for shitting on our history.
Yeah, they are. They're literally shitting on the history. And it's that is in the hills itself. I can bring it in an angle to show it to you. It really is there. It's an old bastion fort that's been carved out on one side. They put a satellite array and a recycling center in the middle of it, and an earthquake struck below it, which is how I found it. And there it is.
Right. And how many of these sites that you discovered because of the earthquakes? That's the only reason you found so many of them. And that how many in a row do you need for it to be like, okay, this is absolute mathematical facts now. This is a system, a grid. It's undeniable. It's not pareidolia or coincidence. And welcome, Eric Hecker. Oh, did we lose Hecker? He just.
And I have to go. Literally, I'm dying very fast.
Yeah,
here.
for much love.
12:30, midnight.
We will let you go to sleep.
Nice to meet you, Dutch. Nice to meet you, Gerald. Thanks, everyone. Have an awesome night, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.
Well, Brother Campbell. And I believe Eric will be right back. Eric's the my friend, good guy that spent a year working at the South Pole, and that you had a couple of questions or things you would like to discuss with there, Michael.
Oh, all definitely. Right. The South Pole, my goodness, we got to talk about the earthquakes and the lack of reporting of earthquakes from down at the South Pole.
But first, I guess, please finish the last aspects of the star forts in St. Louis, and that I know there's a whole nother part that I keep interrupting you on that you really want to get out. So, but it's connecting to it because there's the water tower, that original source of water in St. Louis that you see in that diamond shape of it, that was the original water moat or area of it that you see in the old photo, but that's supplying that water that's then running down into the river. And notice that shape there. And once again, how many coincidences do you need of geometry?
No such thing as coincidence.
Oh, exactly. The flowing water, and then right across the river, directly across, is the Kokia Mounds. So,
please share your screen again, Mike, because
yeah.
When I interrupted you.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. Let me get a display capture turned on. There we go. And over here in St. Louis, directly across the river from this giant star fort, right here. Here's the Geospatial Agency. Here's the outline in the road still. But we go right over here. Here's our racetrack and the Kokia Mounds. And let me turn on all our orders and labels and all that good stuff. And here's the Kokia Mounds State Historic Site with all its big mounds. And they built train tracks and electrical lines right through the side of them. And the train tracks and electrical lines go down to the riverfront, where we go right to the St. Louis Arch. And the St. Louis Arch is built on layers. In case you didn't know, it's built on a layer of coal at the bottom, just like the mounds that I showed you at the start of the update. And then on top of that, clay, and on top of that, red clay, like what Paul's showing you over in the UK.
Everywhere, pretty much.
Right. Metal? Is it conductive?
Oh, yeah. Oh, dude, the St. Louis Arch was built by a guy named Cyril White. He was the designer of it. And if you look up Cyril White, his side project, the thing that he was really interested during World War II was weather modification. And so he designed the arch to actually be a full ring, and we only see half of it. And the other half, he said, foundationally, goes down into the ground and makes it a full ring instead of an arch. And then across the river, they just built this. They expanded the Gateway Arch Memorial to have the pool. Now, the pool and the phallus are something we should talk about at a separate time. You'll see it in Washington, D.C. You'll see the obelisk, which is shown, an obelisk representing the phallus, and then right next to it, a pool of flowing water. And usually the pool of flowing water has suds and everything coming out of it. And they do that on purpose. That's kind of an occult thing going on there. But it has to do with geometry. and flowing to frequency and stuff. It's not a
You
cult.
got
It's-
it. It's a massive antenna array as well. Those the monoliths in those spots.
Not to mention the moving water just through electrostatics creates its own.
Charging it, killer weight.
Yeah.
And look where the river used to go.
Right.
The river used to go. It was directed over right next to the mounds. And we have closed that off. And the Star Fort used to flow fresh water down into the Mississippi. Now we put turds into it. Now, you mentioned the quarries. On the north side of here is Fort Bellefontaine. Belle meaning good, Fontaine meaning fountain. Fort Good Fountain was here, but instead they've done this. I don't know if you see it on the screen. They've quarried it out.
Right?
So
Quarried again. Boom. Look at that, how big it's going. And it's like you'll literally find that and deep down into the ground, like it's indented, inverted deep, like a strip mine quarry at that point at most of these. And you'll see them all over the place where in the old maps of the old world where these bigger star forts and citadel star fort cities and places that were built up several stories, and now it's going several stories down into the ground, and they've reused all of that stone to build the modern world.
On the screen, you see this on the screen here. This is my house. I've already been doxxed, so it doesn't matter. Here's my house. There's my kayaks down at the lake. Now, right over the hill, I found this. Now, I'm going to compare this to this. And what you're going to see is that this goes back to that, and it's another giant star fort right here next to my house, 2 miles away. Now, this has been hidden. I had to find this myself. I made anthropologists aware of this at University of Washington, Washington University here in St. Louis and St. Louis University 3 weeks ago when I made my video on this. Now, on the front end of this, at the very tip of this, right down here, is a radio tower. Okay. They put a radio tower and cell phone tower, big microwave tower. We have power line that goes right through the middle of it. And on the back side of it, another quarry. Now, this is confirmed there. This isn't pareidolia. This matches this one in St. Louis. This one's in North St. Louis, exactly 40 miles down to the foot to the east, due east.
Wow.
So one more time, 40 miles due east of here. We'll just go over, and we're at the Star Fort over in St. Louis. So this one is an ancient one. This is 8 miles long. Now, guess what comes out? This starts at 800 feet. We're up here at 840 feet above sea level. And then we go down, 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 down to the river, the old Missouri River. Now, here's the one in St. Louis. I'll turn it back so it's proper oriented as it was made. So the one in St. Louis flows down, 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 starts about 800 feet above sea level and floats down to the river. The one I found over here by my house, this was built, guys, thousands of years ago. There's no way the French built this. This is 8 miles long. It's overlooking the old remnants of the ancient Missouri River from back God knows how long ago. I had to find this myself in the topography, and every professional missed it. Now, guess what was built here? See this big thing right here? This is nuclear radioactive stockpile from the Manhattan Project that was here. The Manhattan Project just so happened to build their nuclear processing facility for World War II here at Defiance, Missouri, which is right here along this river right here, and at the Star Fort. And they cordoned all this off and made this a giant government facility where now you can live here. But guess what? As a kid, I used to come out here and climb in the old radioactive silos and go up to the top of the old uranium mills. I didn't know they were uranium mills at the time, but why did the U.S. government build another one of these radiological facilities there? Because I already showed them to you out here on the West Coast. We got our nuke test sites. We've got our nuclear bombers taking off in the middle of it.
Same exact spot.
Nuclear. Oh, and I didn't show you the nuclear on
focal spots.
The side of the Facebook data center. The Facebook data center and Apple data center on the right side just like Area 51 and the nuke sites. All the way up here is the Hanford Nuclear Waste Storage Facility from the Manhattan Project. They're all on the sides of these star forts.
It
crazy.
seems like an electrical circuit formula that's repeated over and over.
Exactly. And welcome, Eric. We got Eric Hecker back. Welcome.
I'm gonna
Good
cut
sir.
that off, sorry.
Had some technical difficulties before. I apologize.
No worries. Can hear you loud and clear now, brother. Good to have you.
Excellent.
And,
I was enjoying the conversation before. I was just on the tail end of my work shift, so I did not catch as much as I wanted to, just bits and pieces. But it's been fascinating, the work that you guys have been doing into these starports. As a tradesman, I've always been eyeballing these structures as way beyond the descriptions of what we were given. It just, what we were told doesn't make any sense.
Exactly, right? Like if they're just too complex and too much resources and yeah, just it's so unpractical and over the top and just ridiculous for the time period that they claim that they were needed it makes zero sense. There has to be something so much more to it. And then when you get into fractal ray antennas and just fractals in general and geometry, it all starts making a lot more sense.
You know how long it would take us to move that amount of Earth nowadays with all the massive heavy equipment that we have? I just look at those as job sites, and I just try to imagine how these guys got this work done without the tools that I have available to me. It's like, you got to be kidding me. There's no way. It's like, I don't care what you pay me, and you're like, hey, grab a shovel, Eric, and go help those guys out. Like, no way, no. I quit like immediately. We're not digging this. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
it's lunacy.
Bang on,
it would have
brother.
to be, I would think, frequency of some kind. I mean, I would think cymatics frequency. You know how, I mean, when you vibrate sand or salt on a speaker and it gives you the shape of a whatever, that it could happen on a huge basis. And you were down in Antarctica, right? They're saying you were in Antarctica?
Yes, I spent
is it really? Is it truly
Station.
cold? Is it truly cold?
Oh yeah, it's
down
cold. It's cold for sure. There's no denying that. It's ruthlessly cold.
How about the summer though? Like compared, like is it hot in the summer when it's 24-hour sun though? Like does it
It's a relativity thing for sure, and there's a lunacy. So the hottest day that I was there was actually Christmas Eve, December 24th of 2010, and we got as hot as -5 degrees Fahrenheit, and it felt hot because of the atmosphere conditions being so thin. We were outside in t-shirts, and you got too hot. The sun was cooking you. You did not feel cold.
Wow.
That's wild. That's so wild.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
It felt odd.
Did they let you go anywhere? I mean, if you wanted to go somewhere, could you like just take off and go somewhere? Or do you have to get permission to go? Obviously, the Russians have their spot, and the different people have different spots.
Certainly you would need to get permissions if you wanted to get anywhere far. I mean, you can't commandeer a plane or a helicopter or anything. Actually, there's no helicopters
like
that fall.
a Ski-Doo or something.
I mean, I took a snow machine at the tail end of my winter. I was there for close to a year at that point, and I absolutely scored a snow machine that I was not supposed to have. And I drove that until basically the facility, the South Pole Station, was like a dot on the horizon. But at that point, there's just nothing. There's nothing to see. I mean, it's an ice field at 10,300 feet of actual elevation. It is completely smooth and barren of anything to look at.
Is it really that high? I didn't even realize. 10,000 feet.
Correct. 10,300 feet. The continent of Antarctica is on average the coldest, highest, and driest. It's 0% humidity. Literally.
It explains why it's so cold. The height
it's
alone.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The seismic, see, the thing that I've got about Antarctica, and I don't doubt that Antarctica exists, or I've showed it, with the shape of it. It's shaped like a pentagonal star fort. And that to me, it seems like there would be some seismic that would come from there. And instead, the entire 12 years that I've been online, we don't have not one single report of an earthquake down there below the ice, which we should pick up. I mean, we should be able to pick it up down in the plate, wherever that is down below. And then a guy,
all of the normal outfits that pick these things up aren't picking stuff up there.
Correct. We don't pick up any seismic, and it's not reported to us. And the weirdest thing happened. A few years ago in 2016, I did a fundraiser for my channel, like a few $1,000s or something like that. And a fellow shows up. His name was Professor Astor. And Professor Astor showed up below my fundraiser. He's from the University of Colorado. And he called me a fraud and said, and furthermore, went off on me basically and told people not to donate to my fundraiser. It's really odd.
What was he calling you a fraud about?
Well, this is odd. He was talking about fracking earthquakes, and earthquakes can't be caused and induced by man-made drilling. Now, here's the weird part. He then went on to go down to Antarctica to install a bunch of new seismic sensors to detect the seismic activity from Antarctica.
So your work opposes his work, and he was worried about his grant?
I have no idea. It was really weird. I didn't know who the guy was, but he ended up going down to Antarctica and installing a bunch of seismic, which we don't get any info on. And did they ever, do you know of any earthquakes that were ever detected down there while you were there?
I don't. But then the other thing, like the first thought that crosses my mind is you have 2 miles of ice. Is it possible that that's a very effective dampener so that you don't feel the effects?
No, I think that would actually, in fact, cause more, or at least on the smaller scale quakes. You'd think they'd be happening all the time from the constant ice shifting.
I mean, that did happen all the time. So how do you make a distinction? Like, we had ice quakes all the time, but I couldn't tell you that it's an ice quake or an earthquake. What's the difference?
Right. With the fracture, like a fracture on an ice quake, I would think that it probably would look like an explosion or something. I don't know, but like, it's really cool to think about that down below the ice sheet, that there's of course the plate that it's scraping along, and then down in the plate there should be seismic that gets detected 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, 50 kilometers down in the crust, down in the plate, and it doesn't get reported to us. I'm just wondering if there's some other reason. Like, I found this stuff from
I would say this immediately. There's a massive lag on the info coming off the ice.
That would make sense. They report it later.
If something happened, the general public's not going to hear about it for 10 years. That's how academia works. That's how the whole entire system works.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, any scientist anywhere on the planet, Antarctica is not exclusive to this snail's pace of dissemination of information.
Yeah, it is the last giant ice wall, and that it holds the answers to humans' past, or to a lot of the mysteries of our realm. I just wanted to point out this old map there, Dutch. You were mentioning the inner sea, the old inner sea that was on the west side that went up to the Salt Lake there on the previous existence of North America. Probably before the Ice Age or whatnot, the catastrophe, but here is a map that actually has it depicted there before explorers have made it back over to the north area of North America after European recolonization of whatever genocide or reset catastrophe happened.
Totally, and when you look at it too, it matches up with where Salt Lake City goes back to, where we still have the remnants of the old ocean that's still there. Speaking of the old ocean and interior oceans, that gets back to Antarctica. We saw that there was this video from Bird back in the first expedition or second. It was the Lando Lakes. You guys know about that, right? The Lando Lakes.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh my God, this is crazy. It's declassified declassified film from the 1920s from the U.S. Army Archives, U.S. Navy Archives, a bird down there. And when it was maybe the second expedition, and they took
I don't think it was high jump. I think it was the one after high jump.
Right, they took planes and they flew all the way along and went interior to Antarctica, and they said they flew all the way into the very center. But I was mind blown to see that. and they found this place that they called Land O'Lakes. And they said it was several hundred square miles of an area that was staying warm in the middle of winter, and that they landed their seaplane to take water measurements.
It had
This is in the
light. It was
documentary.
lit up. So, Mike, it would have been North America's winter and their summer because it was daylight in that filmage. Because there was some footage of it that came out. That's original documented footage of these lakes you're talking about, and them being de-iced and melted.
Yeah, it would have been summer down there. Exactly.
Yeah, for it to be lit, it would have.
It would have been dark if they were flying during nighttime. Yeah, but they found it and they said that. I don't know. I'll go get the before we go, I will actually get the it's from a channel called Periscope Films, who restores old film footage that's donated to them, and they got the U.S. government. So check out Periscope Films; they've got it. But
totally.
And now
I have a curiosity on the way to figure stuff out on that direction, because I am curious about what's going on down there as well. And what we can start to conclude is if we know what type of plane it is, people can actually look up. Like, it's going to take a very specific flight pattern. This hole has to be a particularly large hole for you to fly a plane in.
Oh, these were freshwater lakes, Eric, and the footage. I've seen the footage too.
It's like on the surface.
Pull it up here.
I'm not denying it. I'm just trying to figure out how we can find it.
Yeah, it was.
Oh yeah, I'm saying, like, when a plane comes in for landing, it doesn't just see a hole in the ground and then dive down into it. You know what I'm saying?
No, it was freshwater lakes that they saw. So no, this one that Mike's talking about, because there's two stories. There's the story of when Admiral Byrd went into the center and experienced the inner earthness and whatnot. But then there's this second one that Mike Dutch is talking about right now. That is where they saw a bunch of freshwater turquoise-colored lakes with no snow, like melted rock beaches, pebble beaches, and just beautiful
if you're talking
colors.
on the surface, that could be everywhere.
Yeah, on the surface. It was on the surface, but
what he found,
rock and bedstone. It wasn't a glacial lake. They were like actual lakes in the bedrock, and that it was an amphibious plane. Maybe it was from Operation High Jump because they did have the aircraft.
I'd be curious to know what the plane
it landed, and there's color footage of them in it.
I'm sure there's tons of video from on the surface. I was curious about the inner one and what plane they were saying was for that, because then calculations could, I mean, there could be flight paths and hole dimensions figured out.
Yeah, he landed what Byrd described as they landed. They first spied it from above, and they saw that there was no snow or no ice or anything, and that it was down to the surface. And then they landed the plane in the waters to test and see, and they found that the waters were somewhat temperate. And this was going on for hundreds of square miles, but they didn't test them all, obviously. But what they landed in was found to be temperate. And they specifically said that the shores were lined with fresh coal on the surface of the on the surface.
Right, what's it, guys? I'm gonna head off. Thank you for having me. Sorry I couldn't stay for too long, but feel a little bit tired after the event.
Oh man!
So, Dutch, I need to get a way to get in touch with you, because we definitely need to do a show together, talk about some stuff. I'd love to pick your brain and go over some proper history. And also, Eric, you sound like someone I want to talk to you as well. So if we could arrange something at some point, that'd be absolutely brilliant. And Gerald, you as well. So anyway, on that note, I will leave you guys. I hope you enjoy yourselves. Have a great stream. I'm sorry I couldn't stay longer, but had a busy day, and I just popped in to do a bit. But anyway, thanks. It's been great.
Oh, much love, brother.
He had corrective surgery earlier today, and still came in.
Yikes!
Always a pleasure with Luke.
Surgery sucks. Anyway, the long story short is that they found this multi-hundred-mile wide melted area that they said was melted year-round. I don't know how they would know that, but they found it lined with coal, and I thought that was interesting because, okay, coal at the surface, and you've got a lot of water, coal and water, all you'd need is a boiler, and you've got yourself infinite steam power. Like, so
as a plumber, I was confused why they weren't doing steam heat down there compared to what they were doing with the glycol and heat exchangers and blah blah blah. I've heard all of this stuff about Byrd before. And have you never heard of the dry valleys?
Oh, I've heard
In
the
Antarctica?
snowless parts. Yeah, I've heard of like
There's an area
I
called
haven't
the Dry
seen them,
Valleys
but-
that is but that's so he's I mean, people don't realize that he can be discussing very benign things, and because they're not from these people don't have Antarctic experience, they just don't like. I get that the story sounds fantastical. I get that it can be fantastical. I'm not against that possibility, but there are also very present facts that also explain exactly what he saw. The dry valleys existed then, the dry valleys exist right now. His explanation could have been him flying into the dry valleys. It could be that simple.
Is it large areas of water in the dry valleys?
There is large areas of no ice where there's never been ice, and that's why they're referred to as the dry valleys. They use them as a facsimile of the Mars landscape.
Yeah, they landed this plane in the water though, so that kind of.
I'm sure in the barrier areas between the dry valleys and the areas that are completely covered with ice, there's probably intermediate situations going on. I don't doubt that in the
100%, Eric. What
Totally,
you're
totally,
describing sounds like what you see in the videos of it. And so these are supposed mountain/pyramids taken in Antarctica. And you said you witnessed at least one of these while you were down there. I
have to my right, I have a massive panoramic photograph of a mountain range in Antarctica. It's from the program. My roommate was also in the program. She got this photograph from a coworker, like a gift, right? And this you sprawl this thing out and then printed on the pictures each of the names of the mountains in the range. And as you're going through, there's mount this and mountain that and blah, blah. And then all of a sudden in the middle of it all, over one of the peaks, it just says pyramid. And it's the only one that's shaped like perfectly pointed. And it doesn't say Mount Pyramid or Mountain Pyramid. It just says pyramid. So to me, it's photographic evidence from the program that I happened upon somehow. Holy moly.
I love
That's
that.
how life happens sometimes.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've brought this thing out to what do you call them? Conventions and things like that. I showed it to Brad.
Did you say it's on your wall right now?
It's rolled up in a tube right next to me.
Oh, darn it! I was like, come on, let's take a look.
I've put it on the internet for it. The problem is it's like this 16-foot long panoramic, right? So it's not meant to be put on a webcam for people to look at because it just looks all blurry at that point. There's no resolution, and then everybody's like, "Oh, you can't see it. You're a liar." And it's like, what do you want me to do? It doesn't translate through the medium. I mean, I can go hold up a picture for you right now and say, "Hey, here's a big photo of a mountain range."
Right, that you've experienced the pyramids down there yourself, or the pyramidal mountains, and once you've experienced something for yourself, you know it is truth because you've lived through it.
I've flown over the Transantarctic Mountains, and that was gorgeous to see all the glaciers. Like it looks like oceans in motion. You're up so high, everything looks like waves, and you kind of have to pay attention to the fact that it's not moving, but you can get the feel for the flow with great ease. The way everything's moving through the mountain ranges, you can see it all. Yeah, see images like this that you put up, like I see that image and I start to wonder the labor involved. And, just straight up, there are calculations that can be made from man hours. I want to know how many man hours were put on that site.
Oh. Millions.
How many calculation? Right? How would you guys calculate it? I'm no expert on ancient construction, but how many men are needed for how many hours a day to do this from start to finish? What was there before this was there, before they moved all of this earth and structure? This is absurd.
Right? Like the level of terraforming is insane because each one of these canals is literally a wall story down or up from each other, and that they've built these in perfect symmetry and level to be able to flow like that, keep the waters like that, and these massive walls up and up and up like that. It's insane to have to level it all, and that each one of these angles are at least 1, 2, maybe even up to like 3 or 4 stories of pure wall elevation between each level of these moats and their walls and what they're building, and that they have to have this inner same battery geometry, the battery unit that they've bastardized with the bastion fort that we find everywhere as the base of it. And then a lot of the time, the more advanced, then you're going to have an outer shell of with the water in between it insulating, and then between that then these additional radial pieces. And it's like these don't make sense for battle sake. Like, what the heck is this little square here, this little square, this little, like, from people attacking? Like, no, that's not logical in any sense. Like, and that with horse and cart and shovel, and how the heck would they even level it or get this above perspective to be able to understand this perspective of above, and then what they're going to have to level on the ground, and then actually start doing it all with animal and manual labor? Like, are you freaking kidding me? This is next to impossible.
And no instantaneous communication either. So, I mean, you're trying to get it down to a point on either side. I mean, just think about it, guys. This is the man hours. You're right. It'd be like 20 trillion man hours. And how many bulldozers nowadays do you think it would take? I mean, geez, this is insane. Horse and buggy.
And then I also think too about like practical reality on a job site, right? How do the folks back then convey the information from the architect's head to the tradesman's hands? We have blueprints and stuff nowadays in conversations, right? How did they practically do this back then? Did they have blueprints for all these facilities that we don't have? Like, what was the medium of communication? Since you're right, they don't have, a way to do it across the site, but let alone how do they even convey the idea? This is what we're going to build.
Yeah, like it would take a day's journey just for one person to take one of the prints to the worker on the other side of the city, because they'd have to like walk it or hike it or take a freaking horse. Like it's so impractical.
Well, that star fort that you showed out in the Florida Keys earlier, how many bricks were built? Like, what? How many boats worth of bricks did they send out there? Are you kidding me?
Was it 16 million? I think.
Yeah. How do you get truckloads of bricks on and off a wooden?
Yeah, and they built
at the height of the Civil War. Where do you get the manpower at the height of the Civil War to do that?
How many meetings would it take, literally, to build just one section of wall?
Coordinating a star fort being built over there.
Impossible.
Like it's just
we've got a hidden history. I mean, it's pretty obvious there's a hidden history. I'd say the one place where we don't have any clue on it is where there probably would be down in Antarctica, where it's just 10,000 feet of ice, and anything down below is going to be scraped away anyway, so we wouldn't have evidence there, and it would be so old anyways that you wouldn't know. Like,
I can tell you this much: when they were drilling of being a relative term, using hot water to remove the ice to get down to do stuff for the ice cube neutrino detector installation, they were hitting trees and palm trees and stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah, I've heard of that too.
There was stuff in the ice for sure.
It was
palm
tropical,
trees in the ice?
subtropical plant
Correct.
and animal like matter and fossilization they'd find underneath the ice and in the sludge.
They found all kinds of weird. They found a crate of
That's
old hot dogs
awesome.
from some old expedition, and they ate them and got sick.
Finding palm trees, though, that's huge. I mean,
apparently it's the exact in Alaska too.
About the woolly mammoths that were frozen. I don't know where that was, but there were those flash frozen.
Over by Fairbanks.
Is that what it was up north? So
yeah, over by Fairbanks, the guy had 5-acre property. He's got over 10,000 woolly mammoths on it.
Wow.
Yep.
The boneyard there, right?
Yep.
Like,
correct. Yep.
And that a lot of what they're finding is that the plants are like tropical-ish or like just subtropical. Definitely a lot, not just northern, but actually tropical and what's in between it? I don't know. Sorry,
People don't realize right now the southern part of Alaska right now is a rainforest.
Yeah, that's on the coast, right? Well, how far north is Alaska, right? Because you're in Alaska.
Freakishly north. Alaska's just massive.
But
the state of Alaska is 1/3 the size of the lower 48.
To where you were in with what you experienced in the South Pole in a year at the South compared to where you are in Alaska in a year in the North.
I've been to the South Pole Station, which is 90 degrees south, but I've also been to places as far north in Alaska. I think I was up near 72 degrees up in Barrow, Alaska, Ukqiavik, which is the furthest northern point in Alaska. I did some work up there, so they do get 24 hours of darkness in the wintertime for a bit. I guess they get 24 hours of sun for a little while too in the summertime. I don't think I spent as much time up there in the summer though, but it gets cold in Barrow, but nowhere near like South Pole. I think the coldest that I saw in Barrow was maybe -20 or -30 or something like that Fahrenheit.
Okay, so pretty much the same temperature as I'm experiencing in southern Alberta, Calgary.
Probably. I would be surprised if it gets colder than -40 Fahrenheit in Barrow, which is the same as -40 Celsius. So you'd be familiar with that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then how warm does it get in the winter too when it's pitch black there? I remember a couple last year, 2 years ago, it was right around Christmas and super dark, and you were in above freezing temperatures for a week or two or something, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, we get weird warm spells every now and then for sure. You talking about up here in Alaska? Yeah,
yes, sir.
I mean,
yes, sir.
Yeah, it gets cold in the wintertime, but it's not brutal up here actually, and it could warm up freakishly at any point in time. Like today we were supposed to be in the 40s, but it's going to wind up not happening. And we got snow everywhere right now.
Right. So, Dutch, I'm bringing this up in regards to a little bit we've talked off air about the weather and the weather patterns and how what we're being told of what it is might not necessarily be exactly that. And that there's been this extreme, especially North America or Americas, where on the East Coast, it can be extremely hot. It will be the exact opposite on the West Coast and be in an exact freeze, but it extends all the way down pretty much into Mexico now, and it goes back and forth all winter long, where now Texas and Mexico are getting snow each year, and that it can be warmer in Alaska when it's close to 24 hours of darkness, warmer there than it is in Mexico, pretty much. It's just nuts. Or I guess not. It would have to be Florida, not Mexico, because it's on opposite sides. When one is hot, one is cold.
USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, I think in 2018 or maybe it was 2017, I don't know the exact year, announced that they are new growing guidelines for farmers and people who plant crops outdoors. And they had it organized by a 1, 2, 3, and 4 category going up north. And they shifted every area north by 1 full number north, whereas stuff that would normally be planted down in Arkansas and North Texas can now be planted up in Missouri. And they shifted the whole thing to the north, all the way to the North Pole, by changing the numbers and saying that's due to climate change, whatever you want to call that, and that the warmer latitudes are shifting northwards the same year. Actually, this was 2012, so it wasn't 2017. It was 2012. And the way I know it was 2012, same year, a bunch of airports across the country shifted their there's a magnetic declination for pilots that's set into a magnet at the airport, basically along the runway, so you can find your way in the darkness or anything else. Anyway, they had to shift the magnet slightly because north had shifted slightly, which we all know is shifting slightly and heading over towards Siberia. and picking up pace heading over towards Siberia. And they keep track every year. You can see the progression of the pole, the magnetic pole, going over towards Siberia. Now, this gets in with Edwin Haley.
That last picture, does anybody know what that was? The sundog one? The one on the right there?
Yeah, so this one right here, the drawing.
Yes.
Looks like a couple of comets and some sort of alchemical astrological.
I meant the source. Any idea where that came from?
No,
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm intrigued that it matches the sundog so well.
Exactly,
That's
right?
perfect match,
Like,
actually, yeah, it is.
Truly.
That was something that I did witness down in the summer season at the South Pole. I don't know to what iteration, but it was multiple iterations outward. When the sundogs grow into their different iterations and get more complex, they really start to look like a giant flower of life in the sky. And I saw one that was very complex one time, and it had a lot of the circles and the nodes, and I couldn't begin to tell you what level it was, but it was nuts to see happening.
Really?
Yeah, they get that one's just starting. The one on the left, they're starting to get bigger, and the top ring will grow, and then more rings will grow around the sides, and it actually starts to wrap around your entire like horizon line. They get more. You can look up pictures on. You can look up pictures. They grow in a very determined fashion, like in the different stages and such.
Can you actually watch them grow line by line, or is it sort of like a field growth?
It was. I think it was the latter. It was more like a field growth. It was more like it was more like in a way it seemed like it was like something that you felt like it was there all the time. You couldn't see it. It was like it was materializing in front of you.
That's awesome.
It was like all in sections.
This looks like underground tunneling beneath the fields coming out from the star fort. This is tunnels, and look at the freaking geometry and weirdness. What could be the rational purpose of this?
It makes me think of a Tesla valve, the check valves, the no parts check valves, the one-way valves.
Oh yeah,
that's what that makes me think of.
That's what that is. It's exactly what that is.
Water flow.
That's water underneath, probably, then keeping it in check.
Interesting.
Did you guys happen to hear, it was not that long ago, there was some information that just came out to the public, which was an example of what I was saying before. That's interesting. That the information comes out in a lag. When I was in Antarctica, when I was on the ice, I was hearing information at the time. So to me, it was understood. I was present in a place where this information was understood. They were already discussing the massive waterways in between the ice sheet and the continent, like rivers and stuff like that, and that there would be large caverns because the rivers flowing are at a completely different temperature than the ice above it, so it would carve out like a half pipe above the riverbed, and there would probably be shorelines and stuff like that. These were just things that I heard back then, and it was only just this year that apparently they came public, and they were like, oh, we flew planes over with LiDAR. We just figured out. And it's like, just figured out seems to be a really screwy way of saying things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, right, I remember learning about that like at least 15, 20 years ago.
Now they're doubling down on that. It's a massive river system. They said equal to any other river system of any other continent that we see that's not covered with ice.
Wow.
Really? And then isn't this the actual two chunks of Antarctica? It's supposedly this is actually what it looks like.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
The water, and that there's like this water sea between the two.
Well, that totally makes sense, right? Because the vast majority of the land mass of the continent of Antarctica is below sea level. So you go slapping ice on top of it, right? And then you have mountains that cut through that and peak all the way up. Well, down at sea level and or below sea level, it affords a lot of opportunity for there to be waterways in between the ice and the land.
Very good.
Pretty much what Hitler's guys were saying back in the day.
Right.
It's the same thing It's the same thing that John Warner III, the former Secretary of the Navy that passed away recently, disclosed that we had submarines throughout Antarctica utilizing these waterways.
Really?
When he was asked about why, his response was space operations.
That explains the lack of reporting of earthquakes, guys.
I would agree with that. I mean, that if they're going that far, it would cover a lot of lack of reporting for a lot of stuff.
Totally. That would explain everything.
Mm-hmm.
My mind.
Once you add submarines to the mix, everything's quiet. It's the silent service.
Literally, that gets into the submarine base out in the middle of the Mojave and the supposed connection from the West Coast to the Mississippi River. There's this video on YouTube from several years ago of two ex-U.S. Navy SEALs or whatever, and they're on camera, going on record, you can believe it or not, that they say that starting at Monterey Bay off the west coast of California, that there's a undersea connection of tunnels, and that the United States is more like a plate going over the top of an ocean, and that they take submarines all the way into Nevada and then all the way through underneath the plate and come out in the Mississippi River in a freshwater pocket that comes up through the center of the plate, and that they're able to take saltwater subs out in the ocean, bring them into freshwater, and come up and go down the lock and dam canal system of the Mississippi River. This is all a video I watched. I'm like, what the heck? Now you got... Yeah, this is years ago. I saw that video.
So if they can do that maneuver, they should be able to pull off the Antarctic maneuver.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I mean, if there's underground caverns, you can certainly bet that the submarines would use them if they could.
They do biannual exercises up here in the north under the ice with the submarines. Ice X happens every 2 years.
Yeah, off the coast of Alaska and stuff.
Yeah, they're testing to operate under the ice, which means you can't surface. So that's let's just say that might be getting a boat ready to go and do a little bit more developed operations.
Well, yeah, but I'm just thinking of like the size of the ice sheet up there, and like it's essentially a continental sized ice sheet, especially in the winter. And that's what, at least what they claim to be there. And if they are traversing that entire thing, that's the same lengths and conditions as what you're speaking about in Antarctica of navigating those lakes and underground rivers and passages through the ice.
I think it's actually more of a psychological test for the crew of training. I assure you that the submarine crew.
Oh, for sure.
Wants the ability to spawn that boat. You know what I'm saying? When you get on a submarine and you go underwater and you have to do your submariner's job,
no rescue if something goes wrong.
Surface, right? But you take that away, and that crew now has an issue. So I believe the Ice X operations, I don't think it's so much about the maneuverability training of tight quarters. It's just simply you can't get up. You still have you have a ceiling now, but you still have your left and right movement. You still have depth that you can go to. You just can't surface willy-nilly anymore. There, you might be able to find a thin spot. Certainly they do training to puncture through the ice. They do that every training with IceX. But I think it's more of a psychological training for the crew to get acclimated to not being able to surface.
Before I change the subject here and what's up, this star for it, you can see the water of how they have the canals running through. It's like probably 15 different 10 connections to the outer one going in, and then 3 inner circles. And that this is what, Milano, the city of Milano.
And just so you know, Bernie, in 1994, I was in the subservice.
But then what the heck was what?
Hey, thank you for your service, man. That's got to be a heck of a job to be down in a submarine, man. I mean,
it wasn't much of a participation on my side, Dutch, since, to be honest. It was a very peculiar enlistment, which is worthy of other conversations. I learned a lot of weird stuff about what's going on in the world from my short time in the submarine service. But I wound up getting myself out technically. So I don't need any.
You fake claustrophobia or something, right?
That's funny.
Yeah, no.
Okay, I remember what I wanted to ask.
There's a lot going on under the water that they're not telling us about. You're 1,000% correct. There was technologies that I saw in 1994 that they were apologizing to me for, saying, "Oh, it's an old boat. We have old tech. We're so sorry. We're going to get upfitted." And that was stuff that the rest of the world didn't see for 40 fucking years. Touch screens on phones and stuff. You think Steve Jobs invented that? Come on. These everybody out there that's loaded gets handed everything. We pay for it with our tax dollars. Our research and development goes into some program, and then some buddy of some pal gets handed all the info, and then they become indebted to them. And that company now makes shitloads of money, and you think that the outfit that got them started can't dip into that? You think the CIA gets you all set up and then leaves you alone? Yeah, here's your billion.
I heard they never
dollars.
do.
Yeah, we're never going to touch any. You're never going to do anything for us.
You do everything for us, you mean?
So, Dutch, I wanted to bring up that you made several very interesting and fascinating discoveries over monitoring of these cycles, these energies, as well as the satellites and sensor information feeds over the years. One being the radar, sorry, forgive me, I'm a little tired. Which type of radar was it that causes the tornadoes and the toroidal spinning, as well as all these energy laser beam blasts as well? Oh, Michael, there you go. You're muted.
Oh my God. Okay, hold on. Let me get this can of worms and let me open it up. We've got so much that we could talk about when it comes to this. I could go on for 3 hours. This is where I got into all the trouble. This is where I got my channels shut down. This is where this was the forbidden topic, which is directed energy weapons. It was said to not exist. It was said to be a conspiracy. It was said it couldn't happen. It said it couldn't be done. And I understand.
Wait, pause for 1 sec. So, because this could get us shut down, and since Zertis isn't here and Campbell left, I'm going to shut down on both of his channels, and we will just be live on my 2 remaining channels. So I will post the links on that and fully continue aspect of it.
The forbidden word, man. The forbidden word. The H word.
Yeah.
Do not say it. It's like Voldemort, but HAARP. So now I'm not blaming HAARP. HAARP is just the go-to word that everybody talks about. Again, HAARP is the High Frequency Active Aurora Research Program up in Alaska, does ionospheric research, and it can heat little pockets in the atmosphere and ionosphere up above HAARP. It's not controlling your mind in Australia, and it's not fracturing the earth in Turkey. Okay, we can rule those things out for HAARP, I think, personally. But what I found, this goes back to 2011, and I noticed this quite by accident. This actually started on New Year's Eve of 2010 going into 2011. On New Year's Eve, thousands of animals fell out of the sky. Thousands of birds fell out of the sky in Greenbrier, Beebe, Arkansas. And they exploded from the inside. They were cooked. They tried to blame it on fireworks at first, but it turns out there was no fireworks done in the area for New Year's. And this is in a rural area in Greenbrier, Beebe, where they're doing a lot of oil and gas drilling. So I was thinking it could have been something to do with maybe an oil and gas release, maybe some kind of toxic chemical made its way out and the birds inhaled it or something and exploded the birds, burned them inside. I don't know. And within a couple days of that happening, of the birds falling out of the sky, and it was like 10,000 birds. It wasn't just a couple. It was whole towns were covered in birds, guys. It was a lot. And within a couple days, a series of thousands of earthquakes then hit at Greenbrier, Beebe, Arkansas, right next to where the birds turned up dead on New Year's Eve. So I got a little suspicious or whatever. And I decided to go see if there was any weird weather in the area that could justify all the birds somehow exploding internally, and also explain the earthquakes. Maybe we could find something going on with earthquakes there. Could explain maybe a gas release from the hydrogen sulfide or something coming out of the ground that kill all the birds. So I go to the radar and I go look at Greenbrier, and coming out of the area just north of Greenbrier, BB, Arkansas, right at the NEXRAD radar station, the NEXRAD radar station is pulsing in bright red. It looks like a giant red storm over 500 square miles. It's the whole radar pulsing in a giant ring at once, instead of a beam going around, instead of the rotating dish like you would see from a NEXRAD radar going around. This was one giant pulse coming up from the center of the dish and going out to the perimeter of the radar station, 500 square miles in all directions.
It looked like a flower when it was going out.
Red signature, looked like a storm. And I made a video on it and put it out. People said I was faking it. They said I must be photoshopping it. And I was like, what? I'm like, here's the link, dude. And they came back and said, oh, no, you're not faking it. You're actually just seeing a switch between clear air mode and precipitation mode. It's nothing. And I said, no, this is staying in precipitation mode the whole time. I'm sorry, it's staying in clear air mode the whole time. They're pulsing this thing, but it's going out all at once. I don't understand how this is happening, because we're talking about a dish that goes around inside of the NEXRAD. It's a microwave dish. Well, what I found out, long story short, within 72 hours of me making that video, a tornado formed and went and hit the center of the transmitter where the pulse came from originally. So birds die. Pulse, I go to check the day later, and there's this pulse happening. There's earthquakes happening there, and then the tornado forms and hits the center of the transmitter. Now, that happened about 1,500 more times at every radar station across the entire country, including Hawaii and Puerto Rico. The earthquakes, the animal deaths, the pulses, and the storm hitting the center of the pulse within 72 hours. Now, what's going on there with the pulse, I found out this has to do with tuning of the klystron, which is a very complex term. The klystron is a tube that's in there that's powering the radar. It's amping up the power, basically, from a little bit of power. When you read the NEXRAD description for the weather radar, it tells you they're using 7 clothing irons worth of power. What a description, right? For the housewives who are reading, I guess that's going to make sense. 7 clothing irons worth of power going in. And then they, quote unquote, well, they don't say that, zap it up. But the klystron zaps it up in a chamber of its own, a separate resonance chamber that increases the power up to 750,000 watts of peak transmission power from the klystron tube. And I found a training video from the National Weather Service last month about how to tune the klystron tube and what frequencies are producing this giant pulse that I'm seeing, that I was seeing and we still see. And it turns out that the NEXRAD pulses when they're tuning the klystron in megahertz, not gigahertz. Now, this matters. This ties in with HARP. This is how NEXRAD radar rings got the term SLAME HARP rings, because HARP is operating 0 to 10 megahertz at the most, up to 10 megahertz, but they can go lower. HARP can go lower, down in say, single megahertz. And NEXRAD is pulsing up to 19 megahertz. Different methods for tuning the klystron, depending on which tube you get from who makes the tube. Apparently, there's different levels, and it's like 17 megahertz or 19 megahertz. And in the training video, it goes over right down to the very fine points. And in the training video, they say their goal is to create the most output. The guy starts out in the National Weather Service training video. The goal is to achieve the peak power output of 750,000 watts. So what they're doing is they're pulsing. The big pulse, not the beam, but just a big, huge red pulse, is high frequency pulsing. And they're turning the dish all the way up to its highest tilt. Instead of pointing out like this, going around and around, or like this, it's tilted as high as they can get it to get it out as far as it can reach. And the whole dish turns into a high frequency antenna when the klystron is put into its calibration phase, how to calibrate the klystron. And what happens is the NEXRAD dish is as wide as a high frequency antenna would be in your backyard. If you're doing high frequency, a 19 megahertz transmission in your backyard with a shortwave radio, but it's 750,000 watts and it vibrates. And I found, and this is my own findings on HARP, they found that this isn't my findings. I mean, I found the findings from HAARP where they found that the resonance vibrates back and forth for up to 3 days from HAARP up in Alaska with 1 billion watts. So this is more like 1 million watts. So it's 1 million times less powerful than HAARP. But the NexRad radar only has to cover a few hundred square miles around the transmitter where the next one picks up. And it turns out they overlap the stations perfectly. And then we can get into Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Bearden and Scalar and what happens when you cross beams and Scalar. Scalar when we get into CERN. CERN's doing Scalar. CERN over in Switzerland is taking banks of these klystrons, and they'll take a small particle of iron that they strip off like you do with your monoatomic gold. They will strip off a particle of iron. A company does this for them and presents it to them already. They don't do this at CERN. They get basically a version of that, but it's in a powder form. And they shoot a small, tiny particle of iron or whatever using microwaves. Banks of klystrons, hundreds of klystrons hooked up in daisy chain to one another, where they put in a little power, and out the other end comes picowatts, which is an insane amount of energy. And then they have 2 banks of these. One beam goes one way around klystron, or the klystron beam goes one way around CERN this way. The other beam is going this way, and they collide. And where they collide, that's the scalar. And they call it the scalar Higgs boson that they're studying, where they collide the beams and shoot particles together. Same thing's done with the NexRad, but it's over a vast distance and it's only 1 million watts. So it creates a tornado instead of ripping the earth apart.
Yeah, they use electromagnetic resonance when they're doing that. Those cross frequencies are like
look for this, guys. Look for the radar stations to go into pulse mode. All you have to do is look at the non-quality control feed from the NexRad, and they censor these out, by the way. They take out the pulses, so you don't see them because they call them anomalies. Quality control, they call it. I'm sorry. Quality control, got to take it out. But if you look for the pulse, watch for the storm to hit within 72 hours. Hail, severe wind, damaging. The Weldon Springs NexRad radar here in St. Louis has been wind hit 100 times since I've been watching. 105. And the tornado forms and hits the center of the transmitter in the National Weather Service office when they don't misdirect it. And they control it now. So they can stop the tornado as much as they can start it. But do they? No, usually don't. I've seen that they let it hit the National Weather Service office because they don't want to admit that they're causing the rotation to begin with to come into the center of the rotating transmitter that's transmitting 750. Anyway, that's called HAARP rings.
Because that wouldn't be a conspiracy anymore.
Guess who manages the NexRad?
It's why you will always...
The U.S. Army. U.S. Army replaces all the components in your NexRad and the U.S. Air Force. At the Air Force Base, it's the Air Force guys. But it's the military. They maintain all the NexRads across the country because it's part of the WSR-88, Ronald Reagan's missile defense system from 1988, when they rolled out the NexRad radar in 88. It wasn't just coincidence. It's freaking Ronald Reagan missile defense, baby. We're shooting down that stuff as fast as we can with the scalar. And so...
Have you considered you were observed directed energy weapons warfare?
The DWO. The Direct Energy Weapons Warfare Office, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, I'm saying what you witnessed. Have you considered that you were simply observing directed energy weapons warfare?
Oh yeah, definitely. It could even be that our radar stations.
It's a battle. That's what's they're fighting each other. There's people fighting each other with directed energy weapons.
There could be a third party up above punking our radar. I've proposed this, that it might not be us causing the tornado to come to our transmitter at all. That it could be either from an outside source or even on the ground, somebody punking our radar, giving it too much energy in the electromagnetic field, doing the same thing, but from like hitting our radar with it. And then that causes a tornado to form and it comes in and hits us. It could be that too. Yeah, it definitely could be. It could also be in space. Yeah.
I'm obligated to inform you because of the dates that you threw out there and your question. You threw out that you said December to January 2010 to 2011, correct? I was at the South Pole Station and we were commissioning the Ice Cube neutrino detector from construction to operations and maintenance. We, if you check the dates for Christchurch and the earthquakes that happened then, we did that. You're talking about these systems. This is what I'm disclosing. The ice cube neutrino detector also transmits. It is the world's largest phased array transmitter. It is a directed energy weapons system. My crew caused the earthquakes in Christchurch because it was the first time they were firing it and they were attempting to do something and they messed up. So they corrected fire. I don't doubt that the systems that you're talking about weren't hot and ready for us to do what we had to do. I'm certain everybody in that environment was paying attention to everything to get it dialed in correctly. If Bernie wants to go to my website in the archive section, he can pull up my DOM document, which is my evidence from the university. Basically, the manufacturer's specifications for the ice cube neutrino detector state that each of the 5,160 DOMs, each one of those DOMs can transmit at up to 2,047 volts AC.
I'm sitting here, I'm breaking out in slight sweat. Hold on.
I'm trying to find people that understand what I'm saying, but most people I talk to about this,
I know. This man right here fully understands what you're saying.
Wow.
So, Eric,
you
if
talking
you want to get a private chat to your website, I'll
I'm
get
full
that
screen
pull
somehow.
this up.
Did I click a button? I must have clicked a button. I think I'm full screen.
No, I did. I highlighted you.
Oh, okay. I'm like having a mind-blowing moment here. Like he's telling me, I'm like amazing. Wow.
So what you're saying is that's mass scale interferometry directed.
I imagine, I'm not as technical, but I gather I can extrapolate what you're getting at. Yes, they can basically take a signal and like move it around, increase it, do it direction. Yeah. But regardless, just like we know from Tesla and scalar waves, I mean, once you turn this thing on, it impacts the entire planet instantly. If they want to do that. I mean, that's the other thing about directed energy weapons is that we have to really rearrange how our minds work. We can temporarily, we think about a weapon like a gun with a bullet in it and a particular caliber. And we're like, oh, it's a gun. What bullet does it shoot? Well, directed energy weapons aren't limited to a bullet. They can do all kinds of things.
Yep. They can change your...
Guys, we have to have a whole show just on this. I think we should do a whole show just on this topic at some point very soon here. Sure. I mean, like, because
with Jeremiah and Jeremy Reese, the alien scientist. This is exactly the technical group of. We will have the uber nerd out of nerdouts that connects all these great minds that understand these things and that have been working on it and experiencing it, documenting it all, and bringing it together. For the last maybe 10 minutes here, Dutch will end it exactly at 5 hours. But for all of those joining in that aren't aware of Dutch's epic, pretty much 2 decades, at least a decade and a half now, of daily monitoring the system of seismic energies and activities, and his beyond epic record of forecasting earthquakes and his weekly updates of them. Just give us a little rundown and this week's forecast, if you don't mind, good sir.
He has the system of all systems. He's got it figured out, that's for sure.
I'm just happy because I believe he's familiar with the earthquakes that happened in Christchurch back then.
Oh, yeah. You know, you mentioned the Christchurch earthquakes. That is very, very interesting because FEMA was down in Christchurch in the hours leading up to the Christchurch, and then they took off an hour before.
Back then?
Yeah. FEMA was down there just by chance, they said. Just by chance. By the way, North Island. Yeah.
By chance when we turn on the ice cube detector.
Yeah. I'm starting to get, we're going to have to, you and I have to talk. This is so intriguing to me about the neutrinos and everything. This is projecting and transmitting a phased array down in the ground. Man, we got to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the ELF is on as well. I confirmed that myself. There's an ELF system there that they state is off. But I went right to the breaker panel that supplies it. It's on.
That is, my God, I got to get down to Antarctica. You ready to go? Let's go. We're going to get a cruise ship. I'm going to get a cruise ship. We're going to all go. They'll sink it, of course.
Let's
Don't worry.
contact Mr. Beast for round 2 for him. He can pay for it. YouTube can pay for it.
Exactly. I would love to go down at some point, but I don't think they'd let me come back. Now, just real quick on the seismic, for instance, New Zealand, we had warned New Zealand, the North Island, for up to a 5.5, and warned the central part of the island of what we call the catcher's mitt position, which looks like a catcher's mitt here. And it just got hit within the past couple hours at 2 hours ago. A 5.3 to 5.5 just hit our warned area in New Zealand. You can check it off the list. That was one of the spots that we had issued the warning. But the way it goes is the earthquakes start down below the plates with the deep quakes, and then they spread out and away and spread across the planet. I've got a whole video on this. I don't want to bore everybody here on your stream with my kind of update, but I'll tell you, we are watching on the antipode to the opposite side of the planet for new 7.0 level activity that we were watching for last week. I haven't issued the forecast on this yet. This is going to be in my new forecast in the next few days. Probably today or tomorrow, I'll be issuing the forecast. And we're going to issue a new warning for a 7 to strike in Greece over here on the west side, far over from Turkey. And it's the antipode of the 7 down here. And this gets to the whole opposite sides of Earth thing again. This gets into what happens when it goes through the planet and comes out the opposite side. But we're already moving down here. New Zealand already got hit. New Zealand's North Island's been hit. And it's going to go through the planet, and we're going to see new activity on the opposite side. Again, back and forth like a tennis match. But it really, I think, this gets into the neutrino detector and what's down in the plates. This gets into very low frequency and transmitting through the ground. Piezoelectric energy going through the crust. And that's just, my God, we could go on and on. But the forecast is going to call for that. My current forecast also calls for Northern California to be on watch for a new 5. That's not a big deal. We got 5s already coming in and 4s off the coast. That's not that big of a deal for California. The one where everybody... Alaska. Well, actually, it should strike east of you in Yukon, where the 2 rings are overlapping over here in Canada. So just east of Alaska, we should see a new 5.5 in the next 4 days, 4 to 5 days. Break off right here where the 2 rings overlap. That I think that's Yukon. If not, that's right at the Alaska border. Right, Alaska technically comes down all the way down into here, but and then over to the west, the Aleutians are out back in the Aleutians. But right now, I think let's look at the smaller earthquakes. This is a real-time forecast, guys. So for my guy up here in Alaska, we have a line of earthquakes coming off. It looks like a ramp jumping up into Mount McKinley of just hundreds and hundreds in the last 2 days. This is a big increase in the number of earthquakes up in Alaska. We call that a frequency increase. So like we're kind of, if we were beating a drum, right? If we were beating a drum, we've now rolled into a snare drum roll. And there's so many, but this is next to a volcano right at the ocean. And I think that's Mount Sitka. Mount Sitka, I believe is the name. I'm going on memory. We may see a new volcanic blast in the next week out here at Mount Veniaminoff. I don't normally forecast eruptions, but with all the seismic going on here, I'm thinking new blast out at Veniaminoff. Then after Veniaminoff, that's right out here where my mouse is, a new 5, which shouldn't be that big of a deal either. It'll be out in the ocean next to a volcano that just erupted. But the middle of the whole mess is where I'm going to look. And that's how we do forecasting. We look like it's like a wave in a wave tank. And we look to the middle of the wave tank where all the waves are interfering. And that's the spot where the next spot to break takes place. I don't know. I could go on for hours trying to explain it. Simply put, we're going to see a new quake up here in the 5.0 range. And my skeptics would always say, who cares? Right? They don't care on small earthquakes. We only care on big earthquakes.
All right, so that it's gonna be concluding the portion that I play today of the Dutch Sense Eric Hecker interview and stream, and we still need to do the number 2 of getting those 2 epic individuals together, as well as get Jeremiah in there with them as well, minimum, and that they corroborate each other's stories. That Eric Hecker's time working at McMurdo, which is the official South Pole base, regardless, it's deep in Antarctica where he literally spent a year working for Raytheon Contracting. And in this portion that I played here, you heard Eric state that he also was in the U.S. Navy Submarine Corps for another year of time. So, Mr. Hecker there has quite the extensive background, and that there's a lot more to it. People claiming just a plumber, no, he has a distinguished background of decades, careers of wild upbringing and working throughout. But anyways, I gotta end it here within less than 10 minutes, because otherwise StreamYard's AI feature for the shorts won't generate. It won't work. It has to be under 2 hours for it to work. So I got to do that. And regardless, its Apex starts, I believe, in 15 minutes. Oh, maybe it's an hour and 15 minutes. So I guess that gives me an hour to get myself together for that. So that is good. But yeah, we'll be back all day with APEC. Happy 420, everyone. And before we go, here we go, showing what I was doing in the background this whole time. And I was taking several of the triple solenoid copper coils that I've built, a few of them there being the Magrav KFSSI, that's the Keshe Foundation research group's design, as well as the donut coils. Shout out to Bob Grenier at MFMP, Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project, and all the work that they do and he does, and the donut coils being one of them. But yes, the different coils into these electrolysis experiments. I'm going to be taking pictures showing the different stages, and going to continue to set up in between Bert and Ernie here and the Alchemist minions several jars where they're going to be connected to one another and then undergoing active electrolysis, where the goal here of these experiments is essentially creating super versions of Leyden jars, is what I'm going for, but as well as demonstrating a few processes of this alchemy electrolysis, this cold fusion LENR, lattice energy nuclear reactions that happen in alchemy, in electrolysis, in cold fusion, and that in the background, all of the different pictures, every time, or videos, why I always am streaming these guys and doing different snapshots of them is to document it, to be eventually able to create a timeline, or what's the right word? Sorry, I am tired. It's on the tip of my tongue. Anyways, use later and create I guess timeline videos with them. That's not the right word, but you get the gist. Anywho, thank you all for being here. Up next, the next level Mind, Man, and Inspiration, Tim Ventura. That's Alt Propulsion Engineering Conference coming up next. And it's a good 5 to 6 hours. And then we'll be back later today for April 420. We're going to do a 420 panel tonight, I'm sure, as it's Saturday here in Canada and North America. And happy 420 if you're still in New Zealand, Australia, Asia, wherever you are. Whenever it is when you watch this, you have a blessed day, and we'll see you here soon in 1 hour's time. Ta-ta for now, y'all. Bye-bye.
You crazy mother. Yeah.
It's just burning. Hey, Bernie, just like last week, huh?